Today is January 2nd, 2021. I am comparing the run I did on this day to the run that I did last year, that I spent an entire year building up my aerobic base. I did this project to see if I could implement sustainable running in my life by doing something called heart rate management, where I try not to spend so much time redlining my heart rate and try to spend more time in a comfortable kind of heart zone so that I can run more often, more consistently with less injury. So on January 2nd, the second day of my New Year's resolution from last year, I was running on the treadmill still, and this was inside of the gym, and I started this pretty early in the morning. I am a morning person at this time in my life. I was not always like this, but I learned the value of starting off my day like this. The average pace was about 5.5 miles per hour, or 10.5 minutes per mile, and I did this for 3.61 miles. On the treadmill, there's not going to be any elevation gain, so this is nice and flat right here. I have my pace over here, which is the average of 10.5 minutes, but you can see it kind of goes all over the place. If I overlay this with my heart rate zone, you can see that I start off nice and slow at a 12-minute per mile pace, and this is where I'm still in a lower heart rate zone, which is where I want to sustain. But eventually I start ramping up the speed to 5 miles per hour, and then eventually speed up to 6 miles per hour. And now my heart rate is steadily climbing and climbing on the treadmill. For me, at this point in my life, this still feels very sustainable, but this being first thing in the morning, I have to take a break right here to go to the bathroom before continuing on and going back into the 10-minute pace. And this is probably mid-zone for me right here. And then I slow down a lot so I can calm down my heart rate before speeding it up to 8.5 minutes per mile, a pace which I did just a couple of years ago for my fastest half marathon, and I thought I could hang with it, but my heart rate was redlining right here at 8.5 minutes per mile on the treadmill, and then I slowed down and eventually ended the workout. So the average was 10.5 minutes per mile, but I had a lot of ups and downs. I had about maybe almost a mile, like at a 8.5 minute pace, and the rest of it was faster or slower. So the average doesn't really tell the whole story over here. My running cadence was pretty solid at about the recommended pace, 170, between 160 and 180 steps per minute, with the pace going slower whenever I slowed down my speed. But these heart rate zones over here, uh, at this point in last year, I thought that zone 4 felt sustainable enough. If I could just avoid redlining, I thought this was good enough to keep me going. If I could just stay out of the red zone and spend more time in the orange, then I would be able to sustain running for the entire month. And as you'll see in my data, this is mostly what I did for the month of January on the treadmills, trying to spend some time in the green zone, but really not having the patience to run that slowly, because I'm still very obsessed with speed at this time, and I don't like the feeling of running slower than 6 miles per hour or 10 minutes per mile. And that's kind of what you get for being on a treadmill when you don't feel like you're going anywhere. You don't really get this mental return of having this freedom on your feet because you are moving in place. Uh, so I we can let's compare this real quick to 3.61 miles to 5 miles over here. Mile wise, this is just 1.4 miles difference between these two runs. But this one was done outside with a bunch of hills. I only had 350 foot of elevation gain total, but there were parts of this where it felt steeper, and there were parts of it that I had some gravity assisted speed. And the difference is immense. Seven, uh, less than 8 minutes per mile. I was really booking it for a lot of this run. I tried today to do some intervals. So as you'll see in my oh, and we can do one of the good things about when you run outside that is that Garmin will show you what your run looks like. Well, I guess it doesn't really help to have this have the dot. Okay, but so this is the elevation profile for my run. This last hill felt pretty steep, and this is the pace and all the times that I took a break because I'm doing interval training over here. So maybe every mile or half mile I am taking a breather because I am going pretty much all out. And even going all out over here, I am still within pretty manageable heart rate zones at 167. And so when I redline, this is when I'm going to feel out of breath and I feel like there's no more energy in my body. But after a year of aerobic base building, I'm able to start back up, and my heart rate will come down really quickly, and then I'll be able to run fast again, and not quite red line. I'm still in the orange over here, and every time I take a break, it really refreshes me a lot compared to when I was running before and redlining while trying to struggle at at a 10.5 minute per mile pace. When I am pushing it after a year of aerobic base building, I'm able to maintain better speeds without redlining. And then even when I do redline, it is a relatively quick turnaround to get me back into motion, and I feel refreshed and I don't feel like I'm going to die. So a lot of my run went like this. So I'll run, I'll redline, take a break, and then repeat. Throughout this run, I was running with a bunch of inspirational music in my ears. I think there's points where my feet were moving a lot faster than I have previously moved, and my time in zones was, well, I redlined quite a lot over here. 21% of my time was spent in zone 5, and 50, and then 58% when was in zone 4. So when I redlined today, I got a lot of speed out of it. I still feel good today. I still feel like I'm going to be able to run. And the difference is I can tolerate the hills now. And if I take a short break, I'm refreshed and I can keep going versus this one, which was supposed to be, when I went on this virtual run on Zwift, this was supposed to be easy miles. And this was still difficult for me. I was still redlining a lot. Um, yeah, over here, being able to hit these kind of mile times, like 2 minutes faster per mile, is it's mind blowing for me. I was wearing really nice shoes. Let me show you guys my shoes. The shoes that I was wearing were these ones right here. The Nike with the carbon plates, the Next Percent, and it was a pretty wonderful experience. So after a year of base building, I can get a lot more from my heart when I redline, and I even redlining it doesn't feel so bad. Took a bunch of breaks, did a bunch of interval work, and I still, this is the day after I did a half marathon. So if we just go back one day, I did a half marathon yesterday, and I was able to do intervals today with no problem. Totally comfortable. Compared to this day where I was running on the treadmill 2 days in a row, which last year this was quite an accomplishment. In years past, running 2 days in a row was kind of unheard of, but here it is. So 4.13 miles the day before compared to 13.1 miles the day before, and then the average speed is not changing over here. So I'm getting about 10 minutes per mile on the half marathon versus uh, 5 miles over here and 3.6 miles over here for a much bigger speed difference. And the kind of power that I'm getting out of my heart right now is really wonderful. It's hard to describe it with words, but it feels like the best way I can describe it is that I have the freedom to do whatever I feel like, and it is sustainable. So there you go. That is my running data review for today. Tomorrow we'll see what kind of comparison we can do for the previous compared to the previous year.